Okay, so good evening and welcome to our advanced Excel class. Now in today's class, we shall continue our discussion on advanced Excel formulas and even how do you format your data in Excel to make it or to make the working in Excel become more and more elaborate. I want us today to begin with something we call data validation. Before we look at the other advanced Excel formula, let me have you understand something very important that is called data validation. Now, when you talk about data validation, we are talking about that act of ensuring that your data integrity is enforced, to ensure that nobody or the data is not going to be outside the range of the figures that you would have wanted it to be. So this is what we call data validation. Now, to do data validation, you need to select the cell or cells you want to create a rule for, because you're going to create a rule for data validation. Once you've done that, you now select Data tab, and from the Data tab, you select Data Validation. Under the Data Validation, on the Settings tab, under Allow, you select an option. So we have begun with, first of all, you select the cells, then you go to the Data tab, and then you go to Data Validation. Under Data Validation now, on the Settings tab, under Allow, you select an option. It can be whole number, which is to restrict the cells to accept only whole numbers. It can be decimal, to restrict the cell to accept only decimal numbers. It can be a list, to pick data from the drop-down list. It can be date, to restrict the cell to accept only date format. Time, to restrict the cell to accept only the time format. Text length, to restrict the length of the text. It can be custom for your customized formula. And then under data, select a condition. And this condition can be between, it can be not between, it can be equal to, not equal to, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. And then on the settings tab, under allow, you select an option. Now you set the other required values based on what you chose for allow and data. For example, if you select between, then select the minimum and maximum values for the cells, because you've said the range of your data should be between. Now, if you want to add a title and message for your rule, you select the input message tab and then type a title and input message. Here you can have an input message like warning and so forth. Now you select the show input message when the cell is selected, checkbox, to display the message when the user selects or hovers over the selected cells. Then you select OK. Now, if the user tries to enter a value that is not valid, a pop-up appears with a message like the message you have entered. This value doesn't match the data validation restriction for this cell. Let's see how that works practically. Let's see how that works practically. Now, first and foremost, I have some data that I've worked on, but I want us to, we will do it from scratch, but after you've looked at this. This is a data validation worksheet that I've worked on before. And here, we want to validate the profit of the company. The current sales for the current month, let's say 15,000. The sales growth percentage is 1%. Gross margin is, let's say in this case, 55%. Forecast sales are this, cost of sales is this, and the gross profit is going to be that. Okay, so once you've done that, I want us now to see how we can go about this. You can see already I had done it, and it has some data here, like it's telling us, please input your assumptions for gross margins. Historically, gross margins have been between 0 and 90%. Now, I want us to see how this works. So I want to open a new worksheet over here. And onto the new worksheet, I want to copy this data that I have so I can move to the end. And now I want to remove a number of things here, like this one. I also want to remove the comment. So the best thing I can do is go to data validation and clear all data validation. So let's begin. Assuming that the company's gross profit has always been historically between 0% and 90%. And we want to ensure that under the gross margin, if somebody inputs a data that is negative, that's below 0, or above 90, it should inform us or even inform them that the data they have put is not valid. Now, assuming that our current sales are 150,000 or 1.5 million for a given month, then assuming that the sales growth percentage is 1, now I want us to have some data validation rules on the gross margin. What you do if you want to insert that rule is you will go to the data tab, and on the data tab, you then go to data validation and click on the drop down. And then once you've done so, you click on data validation. And once you've clicked on data validation, we have settings, input message, and error alert tabs on the data validation tool. So in this case, I want to start with the settings. And on the settings, we said, under allow, you don't say any value, because in this case, 0 to 90% should be a decimal. So you are going to click on the drop down and say decimal point. You can see it can allow you quite a number of things. Any value, you want to restrict to whole number, you want to restrict to decimal, list, date, time, text length, or even custom. And we have explained this on the PowerPoint presentation, what each of these means. But in this case, we want to use the decimal. And then once you've done so, it will ask you the minimum and maximum. So our minimum will be 0 and our maximum will be 0.9. Because we have said it should allow them. So once you've done so, you'll then come to, if you say okay, it will close. But before you say okay, you should go to the next tab, which is the input message. And under the input message, I want to call it warning. And the input message I want to say here is that you okay, under the input message, I don't want to put the warning. Warning I'll put under error alert. That's what is going to tell us that we have done something that is not right. But then under the input message, I want to input some message here. And this message is going to be So the message I want to put here is gross profit margin. So I'll put the message gross profit margin. Then the input message I want to say here is please input your gross profit margin. First of then I say that historically, comma, gross profit margin has been between 0 and 90%. Then I'll go to error alert, and on the error alert, on the drop down, I'll select warning. So you can see when I select warning, it brings the different icon there. The title, I'll say warning again. And the message for the error I'll say is you have input a gross profit margin that is outside, let's say, outside 0 and 90%. Or to make it even more clear, I'll say that you have input a gross profit margin that is not between 0 and 90%. Then I'll click OK. Now you can see here, it's now giving me that message. Gross profit margin. Please input your gross profit margin. Historically, gross profit margin has been between 0 and 90%. Let's see what's going to happen. Now, if I put 0% here, it won't bring any message. If I put 90% here, it won't bring out or pop up any message. But let's try and put 96%. You see what it gives me? It's a warning. You have input a gross profit margin that is not between 0 and 90%. So it's warning the user that the data you have put or input into this cell is not a valid data. Therefore, it's important that the user does not input that value or checks and puts a better value. But if they still want to continue, the user will just press yes and they'll continue with it. And the pop-up will no longer be there. So assuming they have continued that way, but now you as the validator, you know what should have happened. They have input wrong data. How do you go about this? You go again to Data tab, Data Validation, and you say circle invalid data. So once you say circle invalid data, all data that is not valid will be circled. Like you can see, in my case, cell C5 has been circled. And if I click on that cell, it's telling me, please input your gross profit margin. Historically, gross profit margin has been between 0 and 90%. So that is how you do data validation. Okay, so somebody is asking how I did the circling. Now, what you do is we said, for example, you have already input the data validation rules. like we want the gross margin to always be between 0 and 90%, and anything below 0 and above 90 should be something that is not valid. So we said you go to the data validation, you go to data validation drop down, you click on data validation. We said on the settings, you choose the decimal because in this case you want 0 to 90, so it's 0 to 0.9. Then the minimum amount you'll enter is 0 and the maximum is 0.9. And you can say apply these changes to all other cells with the same settings. You press OK. But even before you press OK, we have said that you can go to the input message tab and your title will be gross profit margin. And your message is that they should input gross profit margin. And historically, gross profit margin has been between 0 and 90%. Then on the error alert, we have said you choose from the drop down and choose warning. And once you've chosen warning, the title, you can name it warning. And the error message is that you are telling them you have input a gross profit margin that is not between 0 and 90%. So that's what you're telling them. And you press OK. Now, if a user comes here and puts negative 10%, you see, it will already have told you that you have input a gross profit margin that is not between 0 and 90%. And I said that users can still go on and continue by passing that warning. But still, you as the validator or the reviewer, you can still check if the model or the data is still agreeing with the rules that you had set earlier. So what you do is you go to data validation and say circle invalid data. So you'll choose the circle invalid data option. Once you choose that, you can see it gives you all data that is not valid will be circled. All the data that is not valid shall be circled. Okay, so the other part I said I want us to learn is a shortcut on how to create tables quickly. And I have data here. And this data, I want to assume it's not in a table form already. So if the data is this way, I'll create a table quickly by pressing Control T. So once I press Control T, I'll go ahead and say my table has headers because it has headers name, science, social studies, and English. Then press OK. It will quickly create a table for you. And you can choose from the variants over here which kind of a table you want or what are the colors that you would want your table to have. Like you can see as I click on this, the table styles, it will give you different table styles and you can choose your favorite. Now, assuming that the data does not have headers, let's say in this case, I delete these. Let's say I can undo so that we go back to the table. Undo is Control Z so that you can go back to where the data did not have a table. So here now, I want to remove these headers. And once I've removed the headers, I now want to again do Control T, creating a table. So here you can see it, even itself will tell you my table does not have headers. Because if you click it has headers, that means you're telling it there are headers or column headers. But in this case, we are saying no headers and press OK. It will still create for you. And you see, it will now give you column 1, column 2, column 3, and column 4. But then you can even change these column names if you want to have it as headers. You talk about name, you talk about the first subject we said was science, so you can rename it. You talk about social studies. Then you talk about English. That is how you quickly create a table. Aha, Philip, you're saying working well. Mercy or single, you're saying what? Okay, that one I think I've answered it. Now, something else that I want us to understand is a shortcut or some kind of formula that one can use to help them get items on a text string, maybe to the right or to the left. And this is what we usually call the mid, the left, and the right formula. So I want to share my screen showing this so that we can work it together. One showing the right, another one for the left, so that I'll show you where and how this can help you. As you do it quickly, get me your feedback on the same. You've said we are using the left or right formula. And in the left or right formula, you have said these are formula that can help you to determine letters from or text string characters from the right or the left, depending on the formula you're using. If we want the left, the first character from the left, for example, we'll say equals to left, and we click on the text string, comma, we say 1, because we want the first character from the left, which is S in this case. And then we can autofill the formula down. If you want the first 2, the same thing, we drag it down. If you want the first 3, the same thing, then you drag down. So you say characters you want are 3 from the left. For the right one also, you say equals to right. And in this case, you click on the text string from which you want to obtain characters from the right, and this is the case, comma. Then you say, in this case, right 1 means we want the first character from the right. You press enter, and then you'll drag down your cursor or your autofill, and it will give you the others. Right 2, right 7, the same case. So let me know from your end if you have attempted this and if it's working for you. So in Jiri, you're asking, what if you do left 5? Will it identify text from digits? Now, no, in this case, it's going to look at the characters, whether they are digits or text. It's going to count the characters and bring you out the characters. Even if you did a space in between, the space will be counted as a character. And I'm going to do it just now so that you can see if that's the case. Mercy, you've said work made easier. Excel is great. Aha, that's awesome. Jedaida, you are saying worked. Njiri, you are saying okay. Aha, great. So let's see now how this happens. Assuming that when you are doing this, you also did a space in between. Let's say you did a space in between SA and M. Remember, if you used left 3 equals to left and you want the first 3 characters, without the space, it should give you some. But now with the space, it should give you SA and then space. Let's see if that be the case. You can see this has changed. If I undo, this was sum. But if I control Y, which is redo, it will now give me SA because it has counted this space as a character. And if even I did it another time, even for the right or left, it will be changing. Or if I did it that way, you can see some characters changing there because of the space in between. Hussein, you're saying works well. Philip, you're saying works well. Mohammed. Hello, Malim from Mohammed. What's the difference between text to column tab and the left and right method? Left and right method is going to separate you the text string into the number of characters that you want. The text to column tab is going to help you convert the text into the column. We shall see how that works later, Mohammed. Peter, you're saying worked. You're saying fine. Rose, you're saying, Rose Kahenya, you're saying worked. Peter Mugo, you have said worked well. That is great. Okay, so something else that I want us to learn, friends, is about deleting blanks from the data that you have quickly. Instead of highlighting the whole of the data and starting to delete one after the other, you can learn how to delete blanks quickly. Now, let me share the screen I have over here. And this screen is for ABC Company Limited, sales January 2020. You can see in my screen, I have got sales for sales representatives, week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, and the total, and even the commission. I hope this is not going to give you a leakage of the assignment I had given earlier. But if it does so, again, at the end of the day, the end product is that we want you to understand and learn how Excel works. So in this case, you can see spaces in between. Each of these cells have input some blank spaces, and I can even add others. So assuming you have got voluminous data, which has got several blank spaces, and you'd want to delete the blank spaces in the span of a second, how do you go about this? I know somebody will tell me you'll need to highlight this row, you highlight again this other one, you highlight this other one, and then you delete. But there's an easier way to do this. You can select the whole table, then you go to the Home tab, go to Find and Select. You can see Find and Select at the extreme right. You click on that drop down. Then you will go to Spatial. And under Spatial, you click Blanks. Under Spatial, you'll click Blanks. So I have said you select the data, you go to the Home tab, then click on the Find and Select drop down. Then you click on Spatial or go to Spatial. Once you've done so, you can now check the box for blanks. You see it gives you so many options like comments, select comments, constants, blanks, current, region, and the rest. But in this case, I want us to select blanks. Then you press OK. Friends, you can see that once you've pressed OK, all the rows or even cells that have blank spaces are now selected. You can see they are all now selected. So once that has happened, you now go to the cells group, and under the delete icon, you'll click the drop down on delete, and you choose whatever you want to delete. Is it the cells? Is it the sheet rows? Is it the sheet columns or the sheet as a whole? So in this case, we want to delete the sheet rows, for example. So you click on delete sheet rows, and you can see in a span of a second, it will have deleted everything. So if you had volumes and volumes of data that you wanted to delete in a span of a second, you can do that by, again, I can undo it and say that what we've said is that you need to go to the data, highlight the whole of it. And I hope you remember how to highlight the whole of the data. You can Control Shift, then you press on the, you can Control Shift, and press on the arrow towards the right, and then the arrow that is going down, and it will highlight for you the whole of the data. And once that has happened, you can see the whole of the data is highlighted. You'll go to the Home tab, and to the Home tab, you'll click on Find and Select, then you'll click Go to Spatial, then you can check the blanks, and then press OK. All the blanks will be now selected. Go to the cells group and click on the drop down and delete the sheet rows in this case, and the sheet rows will have been deleted. Check it from your end and let me know on the chat box if this has worked for you. So let me have your comments on the same in our chat box. Okay, so Anthony, if is it Anthony? If you want to delete all the cells, it will delete all the cells, yes. But in this case, you don't want to delete the cells, because if you delete the cells, there are some rows that could have data, but some of the cells do not have data, and we don't want to delete those cells. We want to delete a whole blank row, or you can decide and delete a whole blank column, but not the cell in this case. Then I can see from Mercy, you've said worked. Jadaida, you've said worked. Ken, you're asking after you highlight, you delete, where do you delete from? Ken, we said you now go to the cells tab or the cells group, which has delete. You press or click on that drop down on delete and choose rows, sheet, columns, or even cells that you want to delete. Irene, you are saying worked well. Esther, you are saying this I will surely use at work. Aha, that's great. Our aim is to ensure that whatever you learn here is going to help you to become more efficient and effective at the workplace. And we also want to see you even having a promotion, because you're now able to do or deal with volumes and volumes of data in a short while. And then Philip, you're saying works well. Ken, Gather, you said now it has worked. Great. So the other important tool in Excel that I would want us to learn is what we call Excel slicers. Now, to deal with Excel slicers or insert Excel slicers in a data range, the first thing you must make sure is that your data is in tabular form. You highlight the table and the data, and Control T is what you have said is the shortcut for inserting a table in your data. So Control T. Mine already has the tabular form. That's why you can hear it telling me I can't insert a table when there's already one. But Control T is the shortcut for inserting data into a table. Then another thing we said is that we need to go to the Home tab and go to the Sort and Filter group, and we do the filter one. Mine, you can already see it's checked, but I can clear the filters and then now enter the filter again. So I can enter the filter again by selecting the whole of this table and entering the filter. Let me remove these other slicers I can see here, because you don't want any slicer in this case. So once I've removed all the slicers, I can now do the sort and filter over here and go to the filter one. So you can choose here and do the filter. Now, having done that, Now I want to show you how we can now insert the slices. We can go to insert once you have highlighted the table. So we can highlight our table over here. And when we go to insert, we will go to slices under the filters group. And you can see it's telling us that a slicer is used to filter data visually. They make it faster and easier to filter tables, pivot charts, and even cube functions. So you can then click on that and choose from the data that you have here, what slicer do you want, or you want a slicer for which of the data ranges that you have. And in this case, we want to have it for product, for example. So I can click for product and say, okay. Peter Kinyumu, to remove the slicers that are already in the table, you click on that slicer, for example, if it's a product, the slicer itself, and remove it by pressing the backspace. But you click on that slicer. Don't click on the data, click on the whole table of the slicer. Ken Gathu, you are saying no connection to workbook on clicking the slicer. Kindly look at how I'm doing it. So once you have the data over here, you will go to the Insert tab, go to Slicer, and then you double click on Slicer. It will give you a pop-up window, which is telling you the kind of slicers you can insert. You have product, customer, quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4. So probably you want some analysis for decision making by management. And in this case, you want, for example, the first one to be for products. So you check the box for products and say, okay. So once you click okay, you'll have your slicer over here and you can move it to this end. And I said that the slicer as it is, it can now give you a very important visual look of the analysis, and you can give reports. You can print out reports for analysis easily. For example, in this case, assuming you want to know how much 2 kg Mumi sugar was sold to which customer and in which quarter, we click on the Mumi sugar, 2 kg. It will give us the product is Mumi sugar, the customers who purchased are this, quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4. It gives us how much was sold in each of the quarters. If we wanted to know how much of the 300 ml soda was sold to which customer and in which quarter, we click on the 300 ml soda. It will give us the customer name, the quarter, and the sales we made in that quarter. The same case applies with the chocolate 500 or even the fresh juice. It tells us which customer purchased, which quarter was this, and how much do we make from each customer, because it can show you the amounts we are making from the customer sales. So this can really help you to print out reports as they are required. If the reports are required by product, you have the slicer here that has product-wise reports, and you can click and report them easily. Next, you can just come here and add another slicer under the Insert tab, and you'll go to Slicer and click maybe Customer. You want an analysis customer-wise in terms of how much of the sales were we making from each of the customers. Then you'll press OK. Having done that, you can then move this way. You can drag it that way. And then we have this slicer here now. for customers. You click on one customer, for example, Arnold, and it tells you from Arnold, we have only made a sale to Arnold of 500 ml soda, and this was only in Q1. You click on Doris, it tells you have sold to them 500 ml soda, and this was only in Q4. To Maurice, you click to Peter, you click Valerie, and the same case applies. You can also add another slicer by again going to Insert, Slicer, and you now want to get a slicer for Q1. How did we fare in Q1? So you can get a slicer for Q1 and so forth. So this is how you deal with slicers. And you can realize that slicers are very important when dealing with the data analysis. Okay, from Johanna, it's working. From Hussein, the table must be highlighted for you to have a connection to the workbook. Selected, great. From Lokai, wow, this will make work easier for anyone handling financial or sales reports. Great. Zipporah, you are saying great, reporting has now become easy. Joanna, you are saying thank you, lecturer. This will assist me in handling reports. Great. Eric, you are saying you have a challenge that Eric, you're saying can't clear the slices. I said the slices, you don't have to clear them. Just Eric, as you can see this slicer over here, for example, if you click on this slicer, like ensure it's highlighted like I have highlighted it here. It has that icon that has the 4 arrows. Once you click that, can you press the backspace and it will remove the slicer. Again, if I come here, click the whole of the table, you can see this has the backspace. It removes the slicer. Try that and let me know. Robert, you are saying Mwalimu shortcut for selecting the whole table. The whole table, you don't have to select the whole table for you to do the slicers, Robert. You just click on any of the places in that table and go to Insert Slicer. But I said you must first of all make sure the table is in, or the data is in table format. Then Ken, you're saying it's working. Can it show in charts rather than table? Yes, we have said, and I can go back to insert the slicer and see what it's saying, that we have said the slicer is used to filter data visually. It can make it faster and easier to filter tables, pivot charts, and even cube functions. So that is very okay. It can work even for pivot charts, pivot tables, and even tables. Then Seraphine, you are saying very interesting work for hours. For 4 hours will be done in 30 minutes. Great. Work that should have been done for 4 hours can be done in 30 minutes. That's our objective, to make you understand these things and become more and more efficient, and also now do work faster and with a lot of accuracy, or a high degree of accuracy. Robert, you're saying noted, thanks. Eric, you're saying you've cleared them. Now you can insert yours. Kenny, Ken Gather, you're saying we hope we do charts practically. Will support my analysis here. Yes, we shall do the charts. Esther, you're saying you have not succeeded, but you will check. Kindly try, and should you not be able to succeed, you can reach out to me. I'm a call away. Okay, so having done that, I then now want us to look at just a few of the advanced functions that we had not completed, and then we call it a class. So I want to share my PowerPoint showing the Excel advanced functions. We have a look at them and call it a class. You have a question or a comment? Kindly let me see it on our chat box and I'll gladly respond to that. So we had looked at count if and sum if, and we said that the count if is an advanced Excel formula that enables you to count data range based on a rule or a condition that you have set. For example, in my case here, I'm telling the Excel to count if the value here in cell C7 to C24 is greater than or equal to 18. So it will only count for me those items that are having a value of 18 or above. So count if will tell you or will count for you those items that are above 18. That's why in this case, you can see the number of items we have over here are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. But it has only given us 15 because the 15 are the ones that are above 18 in value. Let's see how many are less than 18. This is 1, this is 2, this is the third one. We do not have another. So 18 minus 15 is 3, that's okay. So it means our formula is okay. So count if is what we call a nested if function, whereby we have combined the count function and the if function to enable us manipulate our data how we want it. We can also use sum if, whereby you are summing or adding data if it meets certain conditions or rules that have been set. The other function that I want us to have a look at is what we call the FV function. FV function is the future value function. Now, the future value function is one of the financial functions, and this calculates the future value of an investment based on a constant interest rate. Now, you can use the future value function with either periodic, constant payments, or a single lump sum payment. The syntax for this formula or function is FV rate N per PMT, comma, in brackets, PV or type. And remember we have said, anywhere we have the square brackets, it means this is data which is optional. Square brackets relate to data which is optional. You can either input it or not, but still the function will work. Now, the syntax has the following arguments. The first one you can see here is rate, and the rate required is the interest rate per period. It's required, that's mandatory. N per is required also, it's mandatory for the formula to work. And this is going to be the total number of payment periods in an annuity. How many payment periods are we having in this case? PMT is also a very important tool or requirement, and this relates to the payment made each period. It cannot change over the life of the annuity. PV is now the optional value, which is the present value, and type is optional also. I want us to have an example of this future value function. let's have in your Excel workbook this data as I've input it. Let's have in cell A1 data. Let's have in cell B1 description. Let's have cell A2 having 0.12 and cell B2 called annual interest rate. I hope you can copy these formulas as it is quickly, and then we can go ahead and do the formula. So let's copy it as it is quickly, and then let me know once you're done. Great. So I want us to do the future value function or the FV function. And in my Excel worksheet that I have data over here, description, and the future value. So on my cell A2, I have 0.12, which is the rate. That's the annual interest rate. 12 is on cell A3, and this is the number of payments, which we usually call PMT. Negative 2,000, and remember, whenever it's a negative, it means a cash outflow, is an amount of the payment. And then negative 5,000 is the present value, and 0 is payment is due at the end of the period. 1 indicates that payment is due at the beginning of the period. So if the payment is going to be made at the end of the period, we are going to use a 0. If the payment is going to be made at the beginning of the period, we are going to use a 1. Because if it's at the beginning of the period, 1 year will have ended by the time we are doing the first year. But if it's done at the end of the period, it means it's going to be 0. 0 means that we are paying it at the end of the period on that 1st of December when the year has already ended. So there's a difference in time value of money if that is done. So let's see how this is going to happen. Now, the future value is going to be, you can see what I've done here, but I want to repeat it, is equal to FV for future value. And then once I've done so, it tells me to enter the rate, and I'll click on this, comma, it tells me to enter the NPAR, and NPAR I'll put the 12, comma, it wants me to put the payment, and this payment is going to be this. You see present value over here, and I'm going to put the present value as 5,000, and the type, I'm going to put a comma, and you can see it's asking me, is it end of the period or beginning of the period? So in this case, I'm going to say, this is 0, which is end of the period. So it picks automatically, and then I can say, I close the bracket and press enter. Now you see it gives me the future value of this amount at 67,746 because I have input my formula by using these parameters I have over here. I can as well remove the 0 from here and click on this. And it will still give me the values because my 0 is input there, so that every item that I've put in this worksheet is going to be used in the formula. So it's going to be A2, A3, A4, A5, and A6, whereby remember that A5 and A6, which is present value and the payment type, are optional, which is why you can see in the formula, put them in square brackets. So this is how you obtain the future value of an amount of money. Now, something else that somebody needs to understand, I hope everybody has tried this from their end, and let me know from you on the chat box whether it's working. Aha. Mohammed, I need to maybe have a discussion with you because I think Excel slicers were included in the Excel 2013. I don't know if Excel slicer is in 2010. I'll check and then get back to you. That's why I had insisted that you should be having Excel 2016 and above, because there are differences in these Excel versions. 2010 may not have the Excel slices, and that's why it may be bringing you the errors, but I'll check and revert. Johanna, you've said worked. Jaira's worked. Lokai, you've said worked. Roba, you're asking, what if you use type as 1? If you use type as 1, the future value will change, obviously, because it means we are paying at the end. I mean, we are paying at the beginning now. We are going to do that and see. And then Esther, you are saying has worked. Anthony, you are saying I repeat the formula. Ken, you are asking, is it possible to look at slice and chart? We have looked at slicer table. We look at the slicer chart and chart later on. Esther, yes, I'm also using an old version. That's why I got stuck on slices. Yes, that's why I was insisting from the beginning that somebody should have Excel at least 2016 and above, because by then we'd have catered for all this. And kindly, if possible, you can also as well move it to Excel 2016 and above. It can't cost you more than 500 to upgrade it. Ross, you're saying worked well. Esther is saying now we know. Hussein, you're saying it worked. Does select dollar by default cause didn't select dollar? Mwalimu, we did not look index match. We shall have a look at index match, Peter. Yeah, so I hope now you're okay with future value. And also Daktari has done something very good on index match. I wish you also have a look at it and then revert and tell me if you have understood it, but we'll do it in our class. Okay. Now I want us to look at the next item that is on this. Our time is not on our side, but I want to finalize on that. So the next thing I want us to look at is related to the future value that you've looked at. And this is going to be, there's an example too that I've worked on the Excel PowerPoint that you can do at your own time. You can see I have input the data there. But now I want us to look at what we call the future value schedule function. So I want to look at the future value schedule function. And the future value schedule function is the one that returns the future value of an initial principal after applying a series of compound interest rates. Now, you use the future value schedule to calculate the future value of an investment with a variable or adjustable rate. Remember that if you are in finance, if you want to do the future value function and the future value schedule function, is to help you to understand any investment you're going to make, how much it can fetch in future, or what the future value of that investment, to make investment decisions. Now, the syntax for future value schedule function is future value schedule, in brackets, principal, then the schedule. Now, the schedule function syntax has the following arguments. One is the principal, you can see here. And the principal is a very required function, item in the function. And this is the present value. The schedule is also required, and this is an array of interest rates to apply. If you get hashtag value error, then it means that the value in the schedule has not been input as numbers or blank cells. Let's see an example. We have this example here. I want you to copy the example data in the following table and paste it in a cell A1 of a new Excel worksheet. And in this case, you can even write it down. For formulas to show results, select them and press F2. But in this case, I want you to just input the data as it is. Like I want you to have, maybe let's say that you have this data as it is. Can we have the investment in cell B5 as 1 million? The investment in cell B5 as 1 million. Let's have period and rate on cell A7, period. On cell B7, let's have rate. On cell A8, let's have year 1. Cell A9, year 2. Cell A10, year 3. Cell A11, year 4. And let's have the rate as they are, 10, 12, 14, and 13 on cell B7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 respectively. And then let's have the future value calculation on the other side. But I want you to have the table as it is before the future value, and then we do it together. Good. So having this table now for the FV schedule function, I want to compute the future value over here. So I'll say equals to FV schedule. I can also as well click here and go to the recently used functions. Remember we said you go to formulas tab and go to recently used. Click on that future value schedule. Once you've clicked that, so once you've clicked on the formulas tab, recently used, you can click on that one. Now you input you need to input the principal. I hope everyone can see my screen. You shall input the principal, and in our case, the principal is this. Then you'll input the schedule over here. And the schedule is going to be this. So you input the principal, and then you input the schedule. So I want to calculate the future value schedule function here, and I'll input the formula here, FV schedule. And then, so I'll say FV schedule, click on that, press on the investment, which is B5, comma, then I'll have the schedule. And my schedule is from B8 to B11. Then I can close my bracket and say enter. I repeat, I'll click this, say equals to FV schedule. Once I've done so, I'll click on B5, comma, then I'll input the, so once I've put that, I'll put a comma and then click on the schedule of the different rates I'm going to use in different years. And then I can close my bracket and say enter. And it gives me the future value schedule. Let me know if everyone has done that and it's working for them. Jadaida, you're saying done. Rose, you're saying worked. Johanna, you're saying it's working. Hussein, you're saying worked. Jairus, you're saying super. It's working from Johanna. Very interesting from Esther Gitumbu. Worked from Elizabeth. Right. So that is okay. I want us to end the class at this point. Esther, you're saying practically can we use to check our returns with this formula? Yes, we can check on the returns because it's the future value you're checking. So it's practical. Peter Mugo, you're saying worked. Great. So then I think we have come to the end of our lesson today. I wish you well. Let's meet tomorrow for our next class. Attempt the assignment that I give. This is what is going to help you to really become more and more conversant and competent in dealing with Excel matters. Shall be providing more and more assignments, but kindly attempt them and share. Thank you very much. Have a blessed night.